A weapon beyond understanding. The Xilari Empire had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Their technology was unmatched, their fleets unstoppable. They had crushed dozens of species under their rule, forcing them to kneel. The Dravok Dominion was no different. They were just another empire trying to claim power, and the war between them had lasted for decades. But today, something unexpected had appeared on the battlefield. A ship, massive, silent, and unknown. It was unlike any warship in the Xilari or Dravok databases. It had no clear markings, no recognizable design. It did not match any of the known galactic factions. Yet, every scanner, every sensor, every warship AI screamed the same terrifying warning. Unknown vessel detected. Threat level. Catastrophic. The Xilari commander, High Lord Vecren, frowned at his display. This was a joke, surely. A ship of this size, appearing out of nowhere. A vessel that had never been seen before, yet the scanners warned it was more dangerous than even the strongest dreadnoughts. Impossible, he muttered, his claws gripping the control panel. The Dravok warlord on the other side of the battlefield had a similar reaction. The Dominion had fought for supremacy in the stars for centuries. They knew every race, every weapon, every war tactic. But this was something new. Then, a voice cut through the silence. "This is the UNS Revenant. You have 10 seconds to surrender." Silence. For a moment, the entire battlefield seemed frozen. Then, laughter. The Xilari and Dravok commanders exchanged amused glances, a single ship demanding surrender. And from whom? Two of the greatest empires in the galaxy. It had to be a joke. "Destroy that thing," Vecren ordered, still grinning. "Show them who they are dealing with." Across the battlefield, hundreds of alien warships locked their weapons onto the Revenant. Missiles, plasma beams, particle cannons, all fired at once. A wall of destruction rushed toward the mysterious warship. Nothing could survive a combined assault from two of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. And yet, the Revenant did not move. The moment the energy and projectiles reached the ship, something impossible happened. The weapons simply vanished. The torpedoes disappeared as if they had never existed. The energy beams faded into nothingness. The plasma cannons did not even leave a mark on its dark, metallic hull. For the first time, silence fell over the command decks of both fleets. Vecren's breathing became heavy. That's not possible," he whispered. On the Dravok flagship, panic spread like wildfire. The crew looked at their commander, waiting for an explanation. But he had none. The Revenant did not fire back immediately. It waited, watching, almost as if it was testing them. Then, with cold precision, it attacked. A single beam of crimson energy shot from the front of the ship. It was not large. It did not look powerful. But when it struck the nearest Xilari battleship, the result was horrifying. The battleship vanished. Not exploded. Not broken apart. It disintegrated in an instant, as if erased from existence. No wreckage, no debris, just empty space where a warship had once been. Vecren's heart pounded in his chest. The Xilari fleet had never seen anything like this. This was beyond shields, beyond armor, beyond anything their science could explain. "Send more ships," one of his officers stammered. The Dravok fleet had the same thought. Destroy it before it destroyed them. But the Revenant had already locked onto its next target. Again, it fired. Again, another warship vanished. Ship after ship, one by one, disappeared without a trace. No explosion, no wreckage, only silence. Fear spread through the alien crews. Captains shouted orders. Pilots begged for answers. "What kind of weapon is TAA?" Someone screamed over the comms. No one knew. The Revenant, untouched, unchallenged, continued its slaughter. Vecren's claws trembled. This is not a ship," he whispered. "This is a monster." The Dravok warlord's face was pale. His empire had faced terrifying enemies before, but nothing like this. With shaking hands, he tried to activate the emergency warp drive. If he could escape, if he could warn his people. But the console flashed red. Emergency warp disabled. A human voice came through the speakers, calm, cold, and final. No escape. At that moment, every Xilari and Dravok officer understood the truth. They were not fighting another empire. They were not facing another rival fleet. They had awakened something far worse, and there was no stopping it. The hidden power of humanity. Panic spread like wildfire through the alien fleets. The Xilari Empire and the Dravok Dominion, once locked in battle, were now united by a single, terrifying truth. They were powerless. The USS Revenant floated in the void, untouched, unshaken. It was not just a warship. It was something beyond comprehension. Vekran, the Xilari commander, gritted his teeth. He had led campaigns across the galaxy. He had seen entire civilizations burn. But never, never had he felt this helpless. How? He whispered. How did humans create such a thing? Decades in the dark. The truth was simple. Humanity had been underestimated. For centuries, the great empires of the galaxy had ignored Earth. The Xilari had labeled them primitive. The Dravok had seen them as too weak to be a threat. What they did not know was that humanity had spent decades preparing in the shadows. When the first alien fleets arrived at Earth centuries ago, humanity had barely survived. Their weapons were outdated, their ships fragile. The galactic powers saw them as nothing more than a minor species destined to serve or perish. But humanity did not kneel. Instead, they did what they did best. They adapted. They studied alien technology. They learned, they experimented, they stole. And when they realized that no empire would ever respect them, they decided to build a weapon that no one could ignore. Project Revenant, Earth's secret weapon. It had taken 50 years of silent research, hidden beneath the surface of the moon, deep within the asteroid belt, and in the icy darkness of Europa's oceans. Every weakness in alien technology, every flaw in their shields, every limitation in their weapons, humanity had recorded, studied, and surpassed them all. The Revenant was not just a battleship. It was a masterpiece of stolen knowledge and human ingenuity. Energy-nullifying cannons, weapons that bypassed shields, disintegrating targets at the atomic level. Adaptive armor, a hull that could reform and restructure itself, becoming stronger after every impact. AI-assisted warfare, a machine mind faster than any organic pilot, capable of predicting enemy movements before they even made them. Gravitational lockdown fields, a system that could disable enemy warp drives, ensuring no escape from battle. The aliens' desperate counterattack. On the battlefield, the Xilari and Dravok fleets refused to accept defeat. Hundreds of warships surrounded the Revenant, forming an unbreakable wall of firepower. "This thing is not invincible," a Dravok captain shouted. "We just need to hit it all at once." The order was given. The entire fleet unleashed a synchronized barrage. Planet-cracking torpedoes, high-energy lances, gravitational warheads. The void burned as thousands of energy bolts and hypermissiles streaked toward the human battleship. For a brief moment, the Revenant disappeared in the storm of destruction. Silence. Then, the smoke cleared. The Revenant was still there. Untouched. Unbroken. A weapon beyond empires. The battle was over before it had even begun. The Revenant fired once more. A single railgun round. A single silent shot. The Xilari flagship exploded instantly, torn apart by a force beyond its understanding. The Dravok's command cruiser vanished into dust, its shields failing in an instant. Panic consumed the remaining fleets. There was no fighting back, no counterattack, only fear. Humanity's message to the galaxy. A final transmission echoed across the battlefield. "We are no longer prey. This is our galaxy now. And with that, the Revenant disappeared into the void, leaving only wreckage and whispers of its power. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for the last time. The hidden power of humanity. The battlefield was silent. The once mighty fleets of the Xilari Empire and the Dravok Dominion had been reduced to wreckage and fear. The UNS Revenant had destroyed their most powerful warships with impossible precision, and now it simply floated among the debris. Untouched, invincible. Vekran, the Xilari commander, clutched the edge of his command panel. His sharp claws dug into the metal. His fleet had been unstoppable for centuries. But now, he was staring at something beyond understanding. This is not possible, he whispered. A single human warship did all this. The Dravok warlord on the other side of the battlefield was thinking the same thing. His voice trembled as he gave his officers a desperate command. Find its weakness. Scan everything. There must be something we can use against it. But the scanners gave no answers. The Revenant absorbed everything thrown at it, ignored every counterattack. Its weapons erased ships from existence. What kind of power was this? The evolution of humanity. For centuries, the galactic empires had dismissed humanity. The Xilari saw them as weak. The Dravok saw them as primitive. What they never realized was that humanity had never stopped growing. While the great empires waged their wars, humanity had been watching, learning, adapting. They studied alien weaknesses. They stole enemy technology. They prepared for the day when the galaxy would come for them. That day had come, and humanity was ready. The Revenant was not just a warship. It was a statement. The secret behind the Revenant. It had taken humanity 50 years of silent preparation to create this monster. Its weapons bypassed shields. Its armor adapted to any attack. Its AI processed battle strategies faster than any organic mind. Its gravity field locked enemies in place, preventing any escape. No empire had ever built something like this, because no empire had ever needed to. Humanity had known, from the very beginning, that they could not win a war through numbers. They could only win by outthinking their enemies. The aliens' last hope. Vekran's heart pounded in his chest. His mind screamed for a solution. There had to be a way to fight back. Contact the Dominion flagship, he ordered. The face of the Dravok warlord appeared on his screen. We must combine forces, Vekran said. A direct assault will not work. We must use tactics. Strategy. The Dravok warlord nodded grimly. We have one chance. Across the battlefield, the remaining Xilari and Dravok ships moved into formation. Hundreds of warships surrounded the Revenant, preparing for one final attack. It was the most powerful fleet ever assembled in the history of the galaxy. But as they prepared to fire, the Revenant moved. The ghost in the void. For the first time, the human warship accelerated. One moment, it was there. The next, it vanished. Vekran's scanners flashed red. His sensors screamed warnings, but none of them made sense. Where is it? He demanded. Find it. But before his officers could respond, boom. A Dravok battlecruiser exploded. Boom. A Xilari warship vanished into nothingness. The Revenant had reappeared right in the center of the fleet. And now, it was hunting. No escape. The human ship moved like a shadow. It was there one moment, gone the next. A warship exploded. A fleet carrier was sliced in half. A Xilari Dreadnought disappeared into dust. Vekran's hand shook. His fleet was being systematically erased. He turned to his officers. Activate the warp drive. We must retreat. But the screen flashed red. Emergency warp disabled. His blood turned to ice. A human voice echoed across the battlefield. Calm. Cold. Final. No escape. Vekran's body went numb. He had always believed the Xilari were the superior race, that no species could ever defeat them. But today, he realized something horrifying. Humanity had not come to make peace. They had come to conquer, and no one in the galaxy was strong enough to stop them. The aliens' desperate counterattack. The battlefield was a graveyard. Wreckage drifted in the void, the remains of what had once been two of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. The few Xilari and Dravak warships still intact were scattered, broken, and terrified. And in the center of it all, the UNS Revenant. It hovered in the darkness like a phantom, silent and unstoppable. Its hull was still intact, without so much as a single scratch. It had shattered an entire fleet, and yet it had barely even fought. It had simply erased its enemies. Vekran, the Xilari commander, was shaking. His once proud fleet was reduced to nothing. He had led wars, destroyed civilizations, crushed rebellions, but now he was prey. This isn't a warship, he whispered. It's a nightmare. The Dravak warlord's voice crackled through the comms, filled with barely controlled fear. We have to strike now. Every ship, all weapons, we need to hit it at the same time. Vekran hesitated. It was suicide. But what choice did they have? All remaining ships, fire everything, he ordered. The final attack. Across the battlefield, the remaining Xilari and Dravak warships locked their weapons onto the Revenant. Planet cracker torpedoes, gravitational warheads, high-energy lances, doomsday-class plasma cannons. These were the weapons that had destroyed worlds, the weapons that had conquered empires. And now, all of them were aimed at a single human warship. A moment of silence. Then, the void ignited. A storm of destruction rained down upon the Revenant, a firestorm of pure annihilation. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions rippled across the battlefield, so powerful that entire asteroids were vaporized in the blast. For a brief moment, the Xilari and Dravak commanders allowed themselves to hope. Maybe, just maybe, they had finally done it. But as the smoke cleared, their blood ran cold. The Revenant stands unbroken. The human warship was still there, untouched, unscathed, unstoppable. Vekran's mind screamed, this was impossible. No ship, no matter how advanced, should be able to survive that attack. The Dravak warlord's face was pale, his eyes wide with terror. We can't win. His voice trembled. This thing, it's not a ship. It's a goddamn force of nature. The Revenant moved, and the slaughter began. The hunt begins. It didn't fire massive barrages. It didn't waste energy. It simply chose its targets one by one and erased them from existence. A Xilari destroyer, gone in a flash of crimson light. A Dravak battlecruiser, ripped apart in the blink of an eye. A warfleet that had once controlled entire sectors, reduced to nothing. The Revenant was not fighting a war. It was cleaning up the battlefield. Vekran couldn't breathe. His officers were screaming for orders. But there were no more orders to give. There was only one option left. Run. The desperate escape. Get us out of here. Vekran shouted. Jump to hyperspace. Now. His officers scrambled, hands flying over the controls. But then, the console flashed red. ERROR. Warp gear IV disabled. Vekran's heart stopped. No, 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 no. His voice cracked. He wasn't the only one. Across the battlefield, every remaining ship tried to escape, but the Revenant had locked them all in place. The human warship's voice echoed across the comms. Calm, emotionless, absolute. No escape. Vekran felt true fear for the first time in his life. The Revenant wasn't just destroying them. It was showing them what it meant to be powerless, the fall of the galactic powers. One by one, the remaining warships vanished. Some tried to fight. Some tried to run. None of them survived. Vekran's flagship was the last ship standing. He knew what was coming, but still, he couldn't accept it. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. He was a High Lord of the Xelari Empire. He was supposed to be invincible. And yet, the last thing he saw was a beam of crimson light. Then, darkness. Humanity's final message. Across the remains of the battlefield, the Revenant sent out one final transmission. A message to every major empire in the galaxy. This war is over. Earth is not to be conquered. We are not your servants. We are not your prey. We are your reckoning. And with that, the Revenant vanished into the void. The galactic order had shifted. Humanity had been underestimated for the last time. And now, the universe would never be the same again. Humanity's message to the galaxy. The battlefield was silent. Not a single Xelari or Dravok warship remained. The wreckage of once mighty fleets drifted through the void, the twisted remains of an empire's arrogance. The UNS Revenant, the human battleship that had defied all logic, had vanished without a trace. But its message remained. The destruction of the Xelari and Dravok forces was not an act of war. It was a warning, and every major empire in the galaxy had received it. The broadcast that shook the universe. Across the stars, from the Xelari capital world to the Dravok High Command, a transmission echoed on every secured military channel. A single voice, calm, cold, absolute. This war is over. Every leader, every military strategist, every ruler of the great empires stopped what they were doing and listened. You have underestimated humanity for too long. You have dismissed us. You have ignored us. That mistake ends today. In the Xelari Grand Council chamber, silence filled the air. The High Lords, who had always seen humans as nothing more than an insignificant species, felt a chill run down their spines. On the Dravok homeworld, the Supreme Warlord clenched his claws as he listened, his tail twitching in fear. Earth is not to be conquered. We are not your slaves. We are not your prey. Asterisk, asterisk. The leaders of the galaxy had always believed that humanity was weak. But now, staring at the wreckage of a once powerful fleet, they realized the truth. Humanity was not weak. They had been waiting. Fear spreads across the stars. The moment the transmission ended, panic erupted across the great empires. Xelari High Command held emergency meetings. The once mighty rulers of the stars now feared an enemy they never even considered a threat. The Dravok Dominion's military council went into lockdown. Their greatest fleet had been erased. What could they do against such a power? The Zorveth Alliance, the Ketheri Confederation, the Umbral Syndicate. Every empire that once ignored humanity now watched Earth with fear. What if they come for us next? Whispered a Xelari general. We cannot allow this species to rise unchecked. A Dravok admiral muttered. They must be stopped. But how do you stop an enemy you cannot even fight? The Revenant had rewritten the rules of war, and the empires of the galaxy had no idea how to respond. The return of the Revenant. A week passed. The galaxy held its breath. The Xelari and Dravok empires, once at war, were now in a secret alliance. Their fleets doubled their patrols. Spies were sent to Earth, desperate to uncover humanity's secrets. But then, the Revenant returned. Without warning, without transmission, it appeared in orbit over the Xelari homeworld. Every planetary defense system locked onto it. Every warship in range activated its weapons. But the Revenant did not attack. Instead, it broadcasted a simple message. We do not seek war. But if you come for us, we will erase you. And just as quickly as it arrived, it vanished. The message was clear. A new galactic power. From that day forward, the galaxy changed. Humanity was no longer ignored, no longer dismissed, no longer weak. The Xelari Empire ended all military expansion. They feared what humanity might do if provoked. The Dravok Dominion, once the most war-hungry faction in the stars, signed its first peace treaty in centuries. The smaller empires, once bullied by the great galactic powers, looked to humanity as their new protector. Whispers spread across the void. They called it the Ghost Ship, the Revenant, a warship that could not be stopped, a force that had shaken the very foundation of the galaxy. And Earth. Earth was no longer just a minor planet in the darkness. It was the heart of a rising power, a power that the galaxy would never again ignore. The end of an era. The galaxy had changed. For centuries, the Xelari Empire and the Dravok Dominion had ruled with fear and war. They had crushed planets, enslaved species, and expanded their power without opposition. But now, they feared Earth. The arrival of the UNS Revenant had shattered the old balance of power. Two of the greatest fleets in history had been erased in a single battle. And now, the empires that once saw humanity as weak were scrambling for survival. The old era was dead, and humanity had taken its place. The aftermath of defeat. In the Xelari Grand Council, a war meeting was held in secret. The High Lords sat around a massive holographic display, their faces grim. They had once laughed at humanity. Now, they whispered its name in fear. "We have spent centuries preparing for war," one of the generals said, his voice shaking. "And in a single battle, we lost more ships than in the last 100 years combined. They are using technology we do not understand," another added. "Weapons that bypass shields, armor that adapts to our strongest attacks. They are beyond us." The High Lords fell silent. Finally, one of them spoke, his voice cold. "We have two options. We kneel, or we prepare for the end." The room was filled with tension. The mighty Xelari, rulers of the stars, talking about surrender. Unthinkable. Yet, the Revenant was real. And its message was clear. The Dravok's last stand. Meanwhile, deep in the Dravok homeworld, the Supreme Warlord paced in his war chamber. His empire had never known fear. But now, they were afraid to even enter human space. A single human warship had destroyed their greatest fleet like it was nothing. What if Earth had more? The Supreme Warlord slammed his fist onto the table. "We cannot let this stand. If we bow now, we are finished. We must strike before they gain more power." His generals exchanged uneasy glances. One of them spoke hesitantly. "With what, my lord? Our fleets are shattered. Our forces are scattered. We do not even know how their ship works." The Supreme Warlord growled, his claws gripping the edge of his throne. He had spent his entire life conquering the weak. But humans, they were not weak. They had outplayed the greatest empires in the galaxy. And now, the Dravok had no choice but to accept it. For the first time in their history, the Dominion began negotiating peace. Earth's declaration. While the great empires struggled to recover, Earth remained silent. There were no victory celebrations, no broadcasts of triumph. The Revenant had made its point. Humanity was not here to start wars. But if war came to them, they would finish it. The leaders of the galaxy understood the message. One by one, envoys were sent to Earth, seeking alliances, seeking peace. The same species that had once been ignored, mocked, and enslaved were now the most feared force in the galaxy. And humanity. They had only just begun. A universe changed forever. The Xelari Empire ceased all expansion. Their fleets, once unstoppable, now avoided human space entirely. The Dravok Dominion signed their first non-aggression pact in history. They had fought for centuries, but this was a war they could not win. The minor species of the galaxy, long oppressed by the great empires, turned to Earth for protection. The balance of power had shifted. No longer was Earth a forgotten backwater. It was the rising power of the stars. And deep in the void, hidden in the darkness, other alien empires watched. Some saw hope, some saw opportunity, and some began preparing for war. Because if humanity could rise so quickly, then they could fall just as fast. The legend begins. The galaxy had changed forever. The once mighty Xelari and Dravok empires which had ruled through war and conquest, were silent. Their fleets had been shattered. Their pride had been crushed. And the cause of it all? A single human warship, the UNS Revenant. But the battle was over. The warning had been sent. And now, the ship had vanished. Some said it had returned to Earth. Others believed it was still watching from the shadows, waiting to strike if humanity was threatened again. No one knew for sure. But one thing was clear. The age of human weakness was over. The fear of the unknown. Across the galaxy, whispers of the ghost ship spread like wildfire. Merchants feared entering human space. What if the Revenant returned? What if they angered the wrong people? Pirates avoided human trade routes. Even the most lawless of criminals were not willing to gamble their lives. The great empires, once arrogant and unstoppable, were now uncertain. Because the worst enemy is the one you do not understand. And humanity. They had become unpredictable. A new galactic order. As the Xilari and Dravok empires recovered from their humiliating defeat, they secretly built new fleets, planning for the day they could strike back. But it was not so simple anymore. Other species, those who had once lived in fear of the great empires, now looked to Earth for protection. The Vorlian Republic reached out to form an alliance. The Zorvath clans sent envoys, eager to learn from humanity's tactics. The Ketheri Confederation offered trade deals, hoping to stay on humanity's good side. For the first time in history, Earth was at the center of galactic politics. But humanity did not trust easily. The Revenant had shown what they could do. And if anyone threatened Earth again, there would be no warnings, only obliteration. The return of the Revenant. While the galaxy struggled to adjust to this new reality, the Revenant remained a mystery. Where had it come from? How had humans built something so powerful in complete secrecy? But even more terrifying was the question that no one wanted to ask. Was the Revenant the only one? Deep in the black void of space, far from prying eyes, hidden shipyards hummed with activity. Massive warships were under construction. Prototypes, designs, blueprints. The Revenant had been the first, but it would not be the last. Earth was no longer prey. Humanity had risen. And now, the galaxy had to live with the consequences. The beginning of a new era. The story of the Revenant would be told for centuries. Some would fear it. Some would worship it. But one truth would never be forgotten. The galaxy underestimated humanity. And now, they would never make that mistake again. Because somewhere out there, in the cold darkness of space, the Revenant still waited, watching, preparing. And if war ever came to Earth again, it would not be a battle. It would be an extinction.